Hayley, welcome to Girona.
Thank you.
It's lovely to have you here. And I kind of wanted to have this conversation. We do it kind of when we have our Factor Racing riders in Girona, because I think it's a really good opportunity for us to get to know you, but also our audience, because obviously you're new to Factor and kind of to our audience as well, for them to learn about you and kind of understand a bit more about your background, your journey into cycling, what your plans are, and kind of who you are. And I found it really interesting because when I first met you, when we were introduced, it reminded me, and it's funny because it was only a couple of weeks ago that we had a Romain Bardet here, and the two of you are quite similar in the sense that you've both managed to find this balance where you always kind of have something else in your life, which is pretty rare. And I think that was one of the things that I found most interesting when we first spoke. I was like, oh wow, you're different. So it wasn't just about performance, but we can kind of come back to that. Could you tell us a little bit about your background in cycling, how you got into it? Because I think it's really relevant when we move into what you're doing now and the project you have. Because coming from Canada, cycling isn't exactly a sport that's top of the list of things to do. So how did you get into it?
Yeah, I grew up playing ice hockey and dancing. Those were my two sort of pursuits, very polar opposites, but they kind of actually melded quite nicely to make a really good foundation of physical literacy to then pursue something else later in life. But that's a side note. Yeah, I found cycling when I was about 14, 15, in recovery from a pretty serious mental illness that I had gone through. And yeah, I just, my dad and my brother did it, and they introduced me to mountain biking first. That was very much where I came from. And I started to tag along with them a little bit, and it was a major part of my therapy and my recovery from the health issues that I had been going through as a young teen. And it honestly, if I look at it in retrospect, it seems like my journey through cycling follows a very sort of linear path. You know, you start racing locally, provincially, nationally, internationally, and it seems like it followed a very stepwise process. In reality, it wasn't. There was lots of valleys, as there still are valleys happening now. But yeah, it was kind of a family introduction to the sport, triggered by a need to change something to take care of my mental health. And then it eventually became about wanting to race and compete and progress through the sport. And up until very recently, it was very much mountain biking. That was my background.
So you're, like, mountain biking, your current national champion, Canadian. That's been kind of how did you make that transition across? Why didn't you do road? Why did you go across? Because that's become quite a common occurrence now to go from mountain biking to road.
I think I got my start in truly competitive cycling quite late. So I didn't become the thing that I pursued fully until I was 17 or 18. And I had never owned a road bike. We don't really have road racing so much where I grew up in Ontario, in Canada. Road racing in Quebec is actually quite popular, but in the rest of the country, it's not so popular. And we did have a very strong provincial and national mountain bike series. And so that's kind of where I found myself, I guess. And being in nature was a big part of it too for me. So the mountain bike always called to me. And then I guess I just sort of fell into the path of trying to make it to the Olympics. And it sounds like that wasn't a goal. It was very much a passion goal, but it's where life took me. And road didn't really have a role in that so much. Such that I really only, owned my first road bike in the last 2 or 3 years from today. Yeah, and I don't know, that's just, my heart is off-road, yeah.
And so when did the gravel come on your radar?
After Tokyo. So I went to the Olympics in Tokyo, and it was an extremely challenging experience. The entire year leading into the Olympics was the hardest year of my life, and to put it bluntly, I completely choked. My Olympic experience was not what I was capable of, and I was pretty burnt out after that. I was pretty disillusioned with myself and this idea of, am I capable of pursuing elite performance? So I stewed on it for a while, probably, 6 months. I thought I was done. I thought I was done with cycling. I was never going to race again. But then an opportunity came up to do this sort of half gravel, half longer distance mountain biking calendar. And it intrigued me enough that I realized I wasn't done. So I jumped at the opportunity to try it. And I'm glad I did, because I've loved it. And I'm seeing a whole new sort of idea of potential in myself in gravel, which is really exciting. But yeah, I guess Tokyo was really that kind of inflection point.
Yeah. I mean, I think we always need those inflection points, because it's only when we hit those that it forces change. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, change doesn't happen unless something kind of drastic forces it. We always like to think that, as you said, when you look back, everything seems gradual and linear, but often you need those kind of blips, those big blips, to kind of force the change. And I think for you also, one of the changes, I think the reason we kind of got in touch was the fact you've made this leap to privateer world, mm-hmm. which is something I'm a huge kind of fan of within the gravel space, because I think it's, I don't know, hashtag spirit of gravel. I mean, I think it's just, it allows the riders to be themselves more. They select what they want to ride, who they partner with. They can choose their programs. I mean, it sounds all great, but then it's a lot more difficult logistically and et cetera. But what's it like for you for the first time entering into this privateer space?
Yeah, so this really is the first time that I've been my own boss, as it were, as sort of an entrepreneur. You can kind of draw a lot of parallels between, business entrepreneurship and privateering. It's exciting. I think people talk about how much work it is and the extra logistics and that kind of thing, but for me, it feels like I can breathe again. I feel like I've been really lucky that in the partnerships that I've been able to source for this year and next, that I feel genuinely that my partners are excited about what I am excited about, and I feel that they believe in me. And that is, I don't know, that's an extra 50 watts right there. So I think there's a little bit of pressure that comes with it, because you do have to, no one's looking out for you. You're doing, well, that's not true, but you know what I mean.
I know 100% what you mean.
You're responsible.
Yeah.
But it feels freeing. Yeah.
Is this, does it allow you to look at the sport slightly differently?
For sure. I think the biggest thing is being able to have total ownership of the goals that you set and pursue. And that, for me, is what has allowed me to have this sense of meaning be rekindled in why I compete and in the whole idea of cycling as competition. Yeah.
I mean, you've spoken about how you talked about the Olympics, the national team, and how that was in many ways, so passionate. There was something bigger about it. And I mean, I know from having been a professional cyclist and a kind of elite athlete that it's so hard to find that mix of external and intrinsic, and why you do it and what for. And I think what was it, last year, there was that brilliant golf press conference where the guy was talking about it means nothing. You kind of strive your whole life to achieve this, you achieve it, and you suddenly realize you've got to start again. Mm-hmm. How are you you've recognized that, which very few people recognize. So how are you finding motivation now? What are you mixing it up with in order to kind of keep that passion and balance, if you like?
I think for me, there is no greater catalyst for motivation than failure. And I have, in the last 16 months, I've really fallen short of my goals and my potential that I know that I have. And at first, that kind of failure makes you feel very down on yourself and maybe makes you want to quit, or maybe makes you think that your time is over. But when you sit with it long enough, at least for me, that is the trigger. That's the catalyst for wanting to do more and do better. So on the back of having a pretty rough year competition-wise, I was able to make a ton of changes to my approach across every area: mental performance, physical, nutrition, coaching, racing schedule, partners that I feel like I'm a new version of myself, and I'm now part of a, whatever it is, like Team Haley is now a different team. We're I'm just excited about getting the chance to try this a different way. Yeah.
And what are the objectives for this year? I mean, you say that about last year, but kind of looking from the outside, it didn't look like a good year. You know, you won migration race, you won national championships, but I guess that's the big difference, isn't it? Kind of where you put your expectations and then kind of how other people see it from the outside. So where are your expectations for 2026?
Mm-hmm. I kind of divide them into 3 categories. So first, I'm searching for a feeling. So my objective is to, when I line up to race, first of all, I want to race the best in the world and a race against the best in the world. And second, I want to leave every race feeling that sense of excellence, like feeling like you really rose to what you were capable of. So that's objective number 1. Objective number 2 would be specific targeted performance goals. And those are races that that have a lot of personal meaning for me and I'm really excited about. For example, in the first half of the year, my 2 biggest personal goals are Cape Epic and the Traca. And then the second half of the year will be focused on championship level events. And then the third sort of bucket of my objectives has to do with mental performance and personal development. And you do need to have both outcome and process goals. They're both equally important. But for me, having a bucket of goals that's focused on improving and personal outcomes that aren't related to other people, that's really motivating. And those can be as simple and silly as improving your 20-minute power. That's a very personal objective. To a more complex goals around mindset and how you approach competition and that kind of thing. So those are yes.
That's pretty good. That's better than most people. I gotta go Cape Epic track. Just list the races you're going for. So I mean, and we haven't even in parallel to all this, and I guess it makes a lot more sense now, is the fact you're doing a PhD at the moment, and you've just in 2026 you've launched Competera. Can you explain what Competera is?
Yeah. So. Can I explain it concisely? First, my PhD work, I'm in sports psychology. That's my field of study. And specifically, I look at interest, this idea of the experience of interest that people can have in sports. And I'm most focused on improving experiences of interest among young women so that they want to continue participating in sport. And my research will focus on endurance sport, trail running, cycling, that area. And one of the problems that we see is that women drop out of sport earlier than their male counterparts, and they enroll initially at lower rates to begin with. And a lot of time, the answer to that is change the people, change things about the people so that they fit into the sport environment more. But I see an opportunity to maybe change the sport environment instead. Mm-hmm. And so that's where Competera came from, is this idea that what if we were able to kind of manipulate the social circumstances and the activity circumstances inherent to sport so that it just caters to the pre-existing wishes of more women. And so this program, it has 3 arms, but it's essentially a mentorship program and like a social community. Mm-hmm. And the idea is basically just to foster connection and knowledge sharing so that more women who maybe have this budding interest in cycling are given the tools they need to pursue it. So it came out of my PhD work, but it also is just, I want more women to feel the empowerment that you get by learning to ride a bicycle and doing it on your own and going cool places and pushing your limits.
So that's amazing. So you're going to use, because you have the mentorship program. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's kind of a two-edged sword. You can use that to actually support and educate younger women on kind of what you've learnt and how you think you can change things, but at the same time you can then take that knowledge and help to kind of share it and apply it. I guess you're saying, because I suppose for women mostly at the moment, they're having to adapt to the environment they're going into, and you're trying to adapt the environment to fit them better.
Exactly, yeah. And we typically, sport only seems to have value to people when it's formal, when there's rules involved, when there's outcome goals, when it's a definable thing that people can participate in. It's part of the reason why the Olympics are so easy to talk about and why they have so much clout, is because it's this very structured, socially accepted institution. But there's a lot of value in informal sport as well, and in sport that doesn't have competition as the ultimate goal. And I think if you take the research from many different areas, that's what a lot of women are looking for. They're looking for physical challenge and personal growth, but not necessarily in reference to other people's performance. Yeah. And they want to have this sense of social connectedness and relatedness while they're doing it. So, and also not necessarily specific to young women. So I've had the applications for the program are currently open for the mentorship program. And there are many people over 60 who have applied. And I think that is so cool that a woman over, if you're 65 and you want to try riding a bike for the first time, sign up. Yeah. I want to help you do it.
It's so interesting. So in my previous company, I did some surveys when we were doing a lot of kind of trying to understand female customers. And I remember something really hit home to me when we were doing that was we had a load of responses kind of probably into mid-late 20s, and then a load 50 plus. And you could see there was this huge gap where they become mothers and didn't have their own time, which men don't have. There was this kind of really weird kind of, and it was quite moving actually, because you suddenly realized women were getting really heavily back into sport when they got their time back, or earlier in their life when they could. And then I kind of also noticed as well as a fundamental difference between exactly how you say how women treat sport to how men do. Men will often choose one sport and just double down on it, and it becomes their identity. And that's kind of, there's all sorts of different levels to it. But I notice with women, they don't tie themselves to it so much. They can often be multi-sports, doing different things. They don't have to fit in. It's not their whole social identity is the people they do the sport with. It's kind of part of their identity. It's the actual sport itself rather than that particular kind of type of sport. Yeah. So, I mean, it is really interesting. I don't think at all we cater for that at the moment, because when women are coming into cycling, they're kind of having to act like men do in cycling, which is kind of pretty blinkered in many ways. So I think it'll be fascinating to see what comes out of it.
Yeah, it's a pilot year. We'll see where it goes, but I hope it has some value.
So about the bikes. So what's it like riding a Factor now?
The only bike that I've gotten to spend significant time on so far is the Austro Gravel, and it is, the actual bike itself is so fast. I've been riding it probably 60% of the time on pavement, and the speeds that I'm riding at are road bike speeds. Yeah. So I'm really, really happy with that. It's cool. I mean, the bikes themselves are iconic. It's a brand that it's aesthetically pleasing, and I love that it has the sort of like boutique-y feel, but it's relatively accessible to a large. Yeah. I mean, there's not only 50 bikes being produced, kind of thing. But yeah, so far I've had really positive experiences, and I'm really excited to race them.
That's so cool. Well, we're super excited, and I think especially about Cape Epic. That's going to be. I did it 3 years ago, and it was so hard.
Did you enjoy it?
I did, because I was with my sister. My sister and I did it together. Actually, that's I don't understand why we don't have this more in gravel. The pair thing, because the pair thing's amazing. Yeah. It kind of completely changes the whole ambience of the race, because it just, don't know, it feels different. So, is there any gravel race that is paired? I'm missing a trick.
Now that you say that, I can't think of one.
No.
Yeah.
It's the future. So do you know Hayley well? Hayley Preen?
Yeah.
That would be confusing people.
Yeah, so Hayley Preen, we're partnering for Cape
Yeah.
Epic, and I think it's going to be a a good partnership.
I think it's going to smash it.
Yeah, it's an incredibly competitive field.
Yeah.
This will be the greatest depth of competition that's been at Cape Epic for quite a while. But I think Hayley and I are up for the challenge. We know each other relatively well, spent quite a bit of time in the US together last year, and then a lot of time learning each other's racing style at Gravel Burn this past fall.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're going to know each other really well after 8 days of racing together.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
We'll see you in Tracker.
Yeah.
And we're very proud to have you on Factor.
I'm so excited to be part of the brand. Yeah.